Welcome to the channel. I'm back in my car. This is going to be a quick video. I wanted to touch a little bit on the passing of Doyle Brunson. I know a lot of his friends and family and people that played with him and people that knew him really well have already given their thoughts and their condolences and comments and shared some stories. And I've actually been touched by watching all that. It's really nice to see the effect he had. And really, for me, what I wanted to touch on was kind of based on that. I wanted to touch on Doyle's generational impact. This goes back to the early 2000s for me, at the beginning of the poker boom. And if you watch my channel, you know that poker history is kind of my thing right now, which is why I really wanted to comment on this. But I remember back in the near the start of the poker boom, I watched an interview with Daniel Negreanu, and Daniel made a claim that he saw himself as kind of this bridge between the older generation of players and the younger generation of players. And while I don't totally disagree with Daniel, I respectfully disagree in the sense that I think Doyle was that bridge, and I felt that way 20 years ago. 20 years ago, Doyle was in his 60s. I was in my 40s. Daniel was probably in his 30s, but I always saw Doyle as that bridge. And the reason why I saw him as the bridge was because of what he accomplished back in the day. Before the internet, we didn't have this instantaneous access to information. If you wanted to research something, you had to go to the library, you had to look up microfiche for things in newspapers, things like that. If you wanted to improve your skills or develop a skill, you had to go to the library, you had to go to a bookstore, you had to get research material. I think Doyle understood this when he came out with Super System in the 70s. Super System was written not just by Doyle, but by other people like Mike Caro and Chip Reese. They were considered, experts in their field, in their discipline. And so they did the chapters on different games of poker. And Doyle, I think, recognized that. And one of the reasons why Super System was such a success was because that was the approach. It wasn't one of these poker books where somebody who's won a tournament or two gets on there and says, oh, this is the way I did it, and this is the way you need to do it. I've read Super System. For me, it's like the poker Bible. It's the poker Bible for a lot of people. Some people still swear by it. I mean, I've mentioned before that I think that times have changed. They did come out with a Super System 2, and I do believe Daniel wrote part of that. I can't remember which part, but I do believe he wrote part of that. But the point is that Doyle was a two-time winner of the World Series main event. He was the face of Super System. It was his thing. Players that respected Doyle, that wanted to be like Doyle, they bought it, they read it, and they used it to apply to their game. I can only think of a couple other books where that has kind of happened in mass. Harrington on Hold'em, that series is another one that comes to mind. So that was one thing I wanted to mention about Doyle and the new generation. Younger players today, they know of Doyle, they know what he accomplished, and one of the reasons they did was, as I mentioned in my profile of Doyle, Doyle was cashed at the World Series of Poker in 5 different decades. I mean, that to me is absolutely remarkable. It's like I'm a open wheel race card fan. I like open wheel series. Mario Andretti is another one. He won races in 5 different decades. He won IndyCar races in 4 different decades. I mean, that's absolutely remarkable. I put what Doyle did on par with that. There are others that are going to achieve that if there aren't already that have, but I think Doyle's the first one to do it. But I think you're going to have guys like Phil Hellmuth, like Negreanu, if they play long enough and last long enough, that they can also achieve that milestone, which I think is pretty damn impressive. But for the younger players today who rely on the internet, who rely on the upswing pokers, the master classes and those kind of things, Jonathan Little, people like that, they have all that at their fingertips. You can have a bad session and you can go and you can look up, what did I do wrong? And, the internet will tell you, and you can take that to heart. But for so many players, they had to rely on things like Super System. So I just wanted to touch on it a little bit because I'm not in a position to, heap accolades on the guy. I didn't really know him. I saw him in Bellagio a ton of times, as did a lot of people who played. He was always a nice guy, always waving at people, especially when he's driving around the little scooter chair as he got older. But, I felt he was a really nice guy, and everything I heard about him was that he was a great guy. But there's a lot of that out there already. People are praising, rightfully so, and as they should. So, RIP legend. You really did mean a lot to a lot of people, and I just wanted to pass on that there is this connection between the older players and the younger players that I think we should kind of celebrate too as we observe his life. So RIP legend.